Welcome, everyone. I now call the November 12th, 2024 Special City Council meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this point, we'll take a moment to take roll call of the council members by position number. Please say here when the city clerk calls your name.
Thank you. Councilmember Zorns?
Here.
Mayor Thompson?
Here.
Councilmember Alderks? Councilmember Kurd?
Here.
Councilmember Mankey? Councilmember Dodd?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Alcabra?
Here.
All present with the exception of Councilmember Alderks and Councilmember Mankey, who are both absent and excused.
Thank you. All right, first up on the agenda is executive session pursuant to RCW 4230-110-1I, potential litigation. Council will adjourn to executive session for 30 minutes, which means until 6:01, to discuss potential litigation pursuant to RCW 4030-110-1I with no action expected, and we will reconvene the regular meeting at 6:01 p.m. Everybody-ish. Welcome back. I'm going to reconvene the regular meeting. Before we continue with the rest of the agenda, I'd like to reiterate some meeting guidelines. For remote meeting attendees, please speak clearly and pause frequently, and mute your microphone when not speaking. First up is meeting agenda approval. Are there any changes to the meeting agenda tonight? Seeing none, we'll move on to public engagement opportunities. First is Startup 425, Startup and Small Business Co-working on Wednesday, November 13th from 10:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. at City Hall. You can join for a dynamic day of co-working for local entrepreneurs, founders, and business owners. We have a public hearing for the 2024 Comprehensive Plan Update on Tuesday, November 19th during the 6 p.m. council meeting at City Hall. This is the final chance for the community to give input on the draft plan before its anticipated adoption in December, and all plan sections are available for review at engagebothell.com. We also have a career and law enforcement workshop on Wednesday, December 4th from 6 to 8 p.m. in the Police Department Community Room. You can join Bothell Police for a free, no-pressure workshop that demystifies the law enforcement hiring process. Registration is required, and you can do that at bothellwa.gov/calendar.aspx. Next up is public comment. The city has accepted public comment in writing, as well as accepted sign-up for those who wish to speak at tonight's meeting. Written comments submitted to the city clerk no later than 3 p.m. today were forwarded to all city council members and are part of the record. When the clerk calls your name, you will have 3 minutes to speak. Please note that council will receive your input, but we do not engage in discussion of these topics. Staff will make note of items requiring follow-up. City clerk?
Thank you. I have nobody signed up to speak tonight, but I will invite that in a moment. We did receive one written comment from Lou Brunhaver regarding AB number 24177, the Bothell Way Multimodal Improvement Projects, and those will be made part of the record. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak? If so, please step to the podium and state your name, and you'll have 3 minutes. And I'm going to check the attendees. If anybody's in the attendee room and wishes to speak virtually, please use the raise hand function and we'll panel you in. I don't. Did you want to speak, Mary? Yeah. Okay. Please state your name when you get up there and you'll have 3 minutes.
Oh. Thanks, Chief.
There you go. My name is Mary Farley. I live at 18832 Bothell Way Northeast. I'm here to address the widening of 527. Several of us have had significant damage to our lath and plaster houses from the vibrations that are going on in development in Bothell. And I wanted to know what the city is going to do to address those from the street widening that's going to go on in front of our houses. It shouldn't be as much as it was before because it won't be from downhill vibrations, but been through this before, boys and girls, and it does happen. So, and it's not cheap to fix. Second, I think that you look at this project and the logic is to finish what you've begun, which is the phase in front of our houses. However, the backup for the traffic is from 190th up to Canyon Park. And that's an enormous project. It's going to include working on wetlands and streams and cliffs. And every time I go up that street, there's another application for development. So there's all these townhouses going up there. And now there's a new application for 9 private homes on the east side of the street. Now, you want to tell me that you're going to do that in less than 10 years? Fix that first, and then come back and fix the part in front of our houses. That's it. It's going to be a lot of money. They're spending an enormous amount of money fixing the infrastructure on the old Knights of Columbus site. Those are going to be million-dollar houses. They're going to have to be, for the amount of effort that they're already putting into developing those things. Where is the low-cost housing that this is supposed to all be justifying? Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who wishes to speak? Please go to the podium and state your name.
Good evening. My name is LaDawn Bradburn. I live at 18812 Bothell Way Northeast, 3 houses down from Mary. My concern tonight is the same thing, the widening of the road in front of our houses and businesses, which actually is just 1.5 blocks. To increase the traffic lanes, I was told from 3 lanes to 5. When you consider the bike lanes and sidewalks, it's a little more than 6, possibly 7 lanes. I've been there since 1965. I'm right across the street from the Bothell Furniture Store. Mary is a few doors up. She's been there since the 50s. It's a beautiful entrance into Bothell from the north end. It's a lovely exit from Bothell coming from the south. Springtime is especially beautiful with all of our trees in bloom. That gorgeous, magnificent, decades-old magnolia tree that's 2 doors up from me that people get out of their cars and take pictures of. My plum trees are splendid. Any of you have gone down that street, I'm sure, have had an aha moment about how beautiful they are. I call it my friendship tree because many people from Bothell come there and pick plums for jam, sauce. Young couple came this year and picked enough for making a vat of wine. I've made many friendships there with that tree and savor every one of them. I don't know how you think this is going to remedy the congested traffic problem on Bothell Way Northeast between 190th and Reeder Way. It's a 1.5 blocks before you get into town. And then where do you go after that? You go back into the lanes that are available to you to get down to Main Street, going south. For 1.5 blocks, you have 5 lanes of traffic. Going north, you scrunch back into the 2 or 3 there are after 190th. It makes absolutely no sense to me because there isn't traffic congestion there anyway. Certainly there is more in the beginning of the day when people are going to work, and again in late afternoon when they're coming home. I invite all of you.
Thank you, LaDawn, your time is up.
Just 1 second, I'm making an invitation. I invite all of you, any of you, to come and sit on my front lawn. I'll provide the chairs. You bring your own lunch. And you can see that traffic there is not a problem.
Thank you. Your time is up.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Please step to the podium, state your name. That's all I have, Mayor Thompson.
Thank you. Next up is reports, and the first up is the city manager report.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, City Council. Tonight we have two reports underneath this section. The first, we're being joined for an outside presentation for the state of the court. So in your packet, there is a memo outlining an address from Honorable Rosano. She is here tonight, and I will welcome the judge to be the podium or the table, wherever you're most comfortable. Oh, perfect. I think you're coming to the table, wherever you're most comfortable presenting from. So we'll be able to hear from the judge and court administrator, Courtney, and they'll be here to answer any questions that you might have to.
Did I bring my purse? Oh, I left it. I'll be right back. All right. Well, good evening, and thank you. I want to thank everyone for allowing us to come in and do a presentation to you on the state of the court. I'm very excited about it, so thank you, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, council members, City Manager. I don't see our Deputy City Manager today. I can even thank the police chief, but I don't know he had a whole lot to do about that. I am very excited. It has been too long since we've come in to see you and to do a state of the court, and I am so excited about what's been happening at the court. And I know that this is only 10 minutes, so I'm going to speak quickly. I also have Courtney here with me, which is why I'm not standing, because if you have any hard questions, I'm going to defer to her, okay? All right. So if you have your PowerPoint, do you get to see that? All right, so the state of the court, let's go ahead and get started. Actually, Courtney, you're better. What does the Bothell Municipal Court do? I've had a couple of issues that have come up over the last year, so I thought I would spell it out, what we do and what we don't. I'm not going to read those out to you, but I am going to indicate that on the no side, we should have also included juvenile, criminal matters that are non-traffic. So we have jurisdiction over juveniles that are 16 and older for traffic offenses, but not for non-traffic, and so that's important. I know that there's been a couple of programs that there's been a desire to start that we just can't do because we don't have the jurisdiction. Next matter, this is the big one. Look at that. Do you guys see what happened? And I think you know why. This has been an amazing increase in the number of cases that are filed. You can see there's almost a 10,000 case increase. Now, those, from my perspective, are not as big a deal because infractions don't take as much of my time as the criminal side. But for staff, that's a big deal. If just every single one of those people makes a phone call, that's now 10,000 more phone calls they have to answer, and that's a big deal because we are getting people on our phone tree that are extremely frustrated with how long they have to wait, and you may be hearing about that. I know poor Courtney had to hear from someone who was very unhappy in that he left her a message of just slamming his phone up and down on something hard. So that's something that we're dealing with. Look at our hearings per year. Our hearings per year that we've got going on, you see that there's been some changes. One of the things that is concerning a little bit to me is the number of pretrials that have gone up more substantially than the numbers. And so that's something that we're working on, making some adjustments to court schedule. We're going to start a different court schedule this next year to see if we can accommodate that and to try to encourage cases to be resolved sooner and not to have as many pretrials. That's legal talk, and you can ask me questions about that if you want to explain what that means. But you also see, again, the huge number of infraction calendars that are going on. Here's who we are. I know that many of you, when I started, you will recognize that entire top green line. We're here, well, not all of them. Rick was hired shortly after I started. That bottom line, you know, Jackie got hired about a year ago, a little over a year ago, but the other three are new hires. We have a fantastic court and a fantastic team. You've heard me brag about them probably more often than you've heard me say anything else. So we were really nervous as we were bringing new members in, because you know that can really change the dynamic of a work group. And I am excited to tell you that it has been a fantastic fit with every single one of them. They're hard workers. I do encourage my staff to feel free to take chances, to give me suggestions, and to kind of work somewhat independently, and they have all risen to exceed my expectations. I'll point out a couple. Heather is my coordinator. She does a fantastic job. She's been working really hard. Carrie Dare, my community court coordinator, relatively new to that position, has done an amazing job. She has really risen to that independence that we've given her to do that. And I say we because Courtney has also encouraged that. And it makes it a fun place, or at least a rewarding place to work, which is why when we hired Dale, I think we had, how many, like 100 applicants or something for that position, which is not, I have other friends in other courts who are not getting those numbers. So I feel like it's really definitely the combination of mine and Courtney's, and particularly Courtney's style in managing these people. What we offer as far as our probation services, I'm going to encourage you to ask me questions about these. I know you're all interested in community court, but the DVMRT courses, we are leading in that area. Our probation counseling also, so I'd be happy to answer some questions about those, but we're going to skip by those because I have a limited amount of time. Our resource room, this is something we're really proud of. We started this with community court. Other than the clothing there, everything that's provided there is funded through the Administrative Office of the Courts. We applied for some funding through that, and we actually won a substantial amount of that against other courts with our community court program. These are available to community court participants, can come in, they can get food, bathing supplies, backpacks, hats, I don't know, socks are a big deal. Cell phones, bus tickets, bus passes. There are a lot of things that are available. Short-term housing if necessary as well. This is part of our community court. I wanted to talk about it. I won't read it to you, but these are the kinds of comments I have. When they graduate from community court, they have to provide me with a letter of insight to tell me how things worked for them, and this is one of them we received. Another one we received was from a woman who had she was just vicious with staff when she first started. She hated everybody, and she thought everybody was out to get her, and at the end she literally would come back even after she'd graduated because she loved it so much. It completely changed not only her perspective, but her sons, who are also heading into the court system in the same manner. It has turned them around as well. So it's been really a positive thing. Now, not every person who participates in community court is that kind of a success, but you can ask me questions about that. Our community court garden. We are super excited. I know I jumped up and spoke about that at the last time I was here, but, and I will also say, the only picture of a person up there is me, which is absolutely complete misrepresentation. The one person who cannot make anything grow is now pictured there. This is Courtney's dream. This is her coordinating and Parks coming in alongside us to help us do this. And then our community court participants are the ones that are really maintaining it and keeping it up. They can do their community service hours this way. Part of the accountability with community court is they have to do 10 hours of community service. So another way that they do that is with I think maybe the next slide might give us that. Yeah, our community work crew. Rick Silcox, our second probation officer, put this together. This was kind of his dream, and he did all the legwork on this to get it coordinated, get it set up, and working with our partners here at the city to be able to do work crew. He has gathered, I forgot the number, like how many pounds of garbage in with it, going out with, again, doing community service for their community court program. Our community court participants are going out with him and doing garbage collection around downtown. The other stuff there, day detention is really great because I can have people come in and I have them come in during community court, so they see that unique connection, that different type of court. They see us interacting with individuals, and they also have the access to some of the resources, including being able to talk to probation officers while they are there doing their time. So it's kind of expanding it a little beyond community court, kind of allowing that to flow over into other areas. Our programs that we have, our youth outreach, we have the Bothell Youth Court, which again is amazing. I receive compliments from judges all over the state when they go to the state programs about our community court youth. I think we are up to about 30 students now, and I know that they are receiving applications constantly, and they are truly like interviewing people and making sure that they're really committed to the program before they're allowing them in, because they're being able to be very selective. The program itself as I know you have been blown away by some of these students. Not pictured is also the mock trials that we do, that I participate with the students and we're able to do, which is really also a lot of fun and gets our local high schools involved in coming down here. Law Day, I know you all know this. We had 150 students come through with Law Day. It may seem like I'm doing all the talking and all I'm doing is saying Courtney, 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 which is really kind of the truth. Courtney, this was something that she took and ran with. She coordinated and arranged for a number of these, like you see there. She, as I say, she got the bit in her teeth and ran with it. It's my joke because of all the horses. She got the Seattle Police Horse Mounted Patrol to come. And so a lot of fun there, and having a good time. And it was really a lot of fun to have the students there and to be able to express and to go through with them how their government works. Future challenges. There's a lot of them. We're talking about access to justice. We're dealing with an amazing shortage in public defenders, and there's a lot of reasons for that we're trying to work with the state. It's this horrible teetering, they're balancing that we have to do because the Supreme Court wants to grant any individual who has public defense, they want them to have the same level of care and representation that they would receive in the private world. And so they want to limit the number of cases that a public defender has, which is absolutely appropriate. The problem with that is we often supplement our public defense with private firms that are willing to take on a few cases of public defense. But if they do that right now under the current rules, they then have to maintain that same lower caseload. And a lot of the private firms could not stay open if they were to limit their numbers to that. And so there's this balance of wanting to provide appropriate representation with, if we don't have anybody that's willing to do it, they're not getting any representation. So there's a lot of people, there's going to be a lot of discussions with the Chief Justice is going to be leading an open forum. I know that our public defense firm, that the head of that is planning to attend, because to meet the newer standards, he'll have to hire 32 people, is what he said, which is not feasible. We just don't have the number of people willing to do it. There's a new case management system coming out with the courts. I'm sure you're all aware that the courts right now are having some issues with their case management system. We're hoping that will be resolved shortly. But the new system hopefully will also help with that. And then finally, just the infrastructure, the actual, where are we going to house people? We are very excited and thankful that we're going to be able to do a refit of our building. But I know that this council looks far in the future, and I know that you're going to be realizing that with the increases that are coming, you need to increase your police department, your prosecutor's office, and your court system. And so looking to the physical housing of that is something that in the long time future is something I know you're going to be having to consider, and I wanted to make sure you knew about that. All right, I hope I've kept myself under 10 minutes. No. But with that, I will open this up to questions. There are a number of things I know that we covered and that we didn't cover, so please feel free to ask me about anything.
Councilmember Dodd.
Thank you. Thank you for the update. And this is the first time that I've been in the presence of Courtney, and I don't want to make you feel awkward, but like everybody sings your praises. And I hope that you're very proud of that. Like what a delight. So I'm excited to meet you. I did want to ask, I have like 10,000 questions, but I'm going to limit myself. So my question that I'm going to say is most pressing is, do you need or accept donations to your resource room? And who would we ask about that?
The court may not solicit donations. If I have a very, I donate clothing for myself, and I know other staff members donate clothing, and Carrie is my community court coordinator.
If you didn't ask someone to do it, but they offered, is that okay?
I think it is. I think
Okay.
there are other courts that are receiving under those circumstances.
Okay. Thank you. It was a really helpful presentation and very thorough, which I appreciated. Thanks.
Councilmember Zorns.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to see you. I heard about how many slides you started off with. It's very impressive. And I don't want to imply that I didn't hear you talk about future challenges. I think that's important for us to know is when we talk to our reps what you're facing, on the state level. So thank you for that. I have two questions. One is, it's not an offer because it's not within my purview, but if it was, it would be an offer. But if there was ever an opportunity to expand the community garden, is that something, because you were listing off all the things that you put in there, like, man, that's a lot for that space. If there was ever an opportunity to expand the community garden, would you have the manpower that would be interested in doing it, or are you kind of at what you need?
As I say, I think that we would be happy for any additional dirt that would be available to grow something.
Okay.
I should have said this, we use the proceeds from the plants mostly to put into the resource room so that the community court participants are getting those resources. I know of other places where they take them and donate them to the food bank.
Okay.
So anything that we can do, and I also know that because I invited people to just stop by and pick a tomato or something. So.
I was sorely tempted on one walk to do that. There was some good-looking fruit in there. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, that's good to know. And then the other question is, I don't know that you would encourage this. You had something up on social media with your youth court. It was totally darling, and all those kids, it was just like, man, they look like a great group of kids that are...
They're amazing.
Yeah.
They truly are.
Here's my question for you. Do relationships ever happen organically? Because we're talking about peer on peer, right? Mm-hmm. Do any of these students who are involved on the court side versus coming in, I don't know, on the judicial side versus coming in, do relationships ever happen organically? Do you ever hear about kids saying, I bumped into so-and-so and we had a great conversation, or?
Well, I'm not sure if it covers exactly what you're talking about, but one of the employees, if we can get back there, Madison, was one of the Bothell Youth Court participants. And then now she has come back. She volunteered for a little while, and now she's come back, and she's now an employee. You also know Tanya, who last year won the AWC.
Yeah.
And so Tanya had come up to me and asked me about some like where she should go for her interests, and I directed her to talk with Representative Dorr, and so just those kinds of things.
Good.
So yes, those, if that's answering your question, or maybe.
I was just saying about the kids in school who come and they're standing before the youth court, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Do they ever, is it comfortable? You know, kids,
So
you can't force it, but it would be great if some of those, you know, there's some good relationships that.
between the youth court
And their peers,
participants
if they have.
and the people who are actually in youth court.
Yes.
So yes, I think that there are some friendships that are formed that way, but I think also it's really interesting because the youth court participants take their roles very, very seriously, and they're very professional about it.
Oh, good.
And so I think that they do kind of create that distance to just because they are sitting there to be in judgment of their peers.
Right. Right.
But I mean, sometimes obviously they know people and other things, so there is an element of that as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's a good growing experience on
I think
all
one
levels.
of the things we do is one of the common accountability aspects is to sit as a juror in future hearings. And often that will manifest in the person becoming interested in youth court and possibly wanting to participate
great.
in that. So
Yeah.
that's one of the ways, I think. Yeah.
That's great that's options that are opened up for these kids.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions?
I don't think so. I was happy to hear about kind of some of the other restorative things you're doing, the DVMRT classes and the probation counseling. Like, that's just really cool. Like, just appreciate that you guys are doing that work.
Dan, I tell people all the time when I put them on probation, because you call it a probation officer, that this person is not there to get them in trouble. I actually joke with them. I say, I'm a lazy judge. And if you're working with them and able to keep in touch with them, you're likely not going to talk to me again. And that makes my life easier. So they know that, and they're going to help you not come back before me. And then they're like, oh, okay. Sometimes they're like, whatever. They hear wah 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 wah.
Yeah.
Depends where they are in their growth there. But yeah, so then we have great, and then Paige has just done an amazing job with our DVMRT, and she's expanded it, and so we have a lot of people participating, not just people from Bothell Court. Let's see. We're hoping we have 2 more people that are certified now to do DVMRT. We have Rick and Alex are both certified, so we're hoping to allow them to have some opportunities there too.
Awesome. Thank you guys both so much for your time.
I'm going to also just say we're going to be switching a little bit in community court before I leave, before they kick me off, would drag out the hook to take me off the stage. We are going to be restructuring a little bit so that we can do quarterly graduations, because we would love to see anybody from council or from court, from the city, that would like to come and see these people and encourage them in their path as they've graduated from our community court. We've had a really good success rate. We've had a couple of horrible failures, but we've had some really, really good success rates. And I'd love to see some people there to encourage them and let them know that it's important to the city as well. But we're going to do it quarterly so that we can actually schedule it so you'll know and not just be like, hey, Friday. All right. So I think that's it, unless there's any other questions now that I added something.
I think we're good. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure. Thanks for coming.
Thank you again to the judge and to Court Administrator Courtney White, who also serves on our city executive leadership team as a conduit back to the court. And we are very appreciative of the partnership that we have together.
It is nice to see Courtney and just not hear of the legend, I will say.
They're all true. All the
Yeah.
stories are true. I think you're getting a taste of that tonight. So.
She is truly amazing, I'm just going to say. And it embarrasses her when we say so.
And that makes you want to say it even more. Yeah. Thank you both for coming.
So next up under reports, Mayor, when we looked through the list of remaining questions on the budget, the decision was that for tonight, our better allocation of time was going to be we have 2 public hearings, as you saw on your agenda. One is the City Council and one in your other personas. So we'll focus on that. But we did, what you'll notice in your packet, there is a staff briefing that has an updated schedule of what to expect in the next couple of weeks. We're getting close to adoption. And then also, there's an attachment to the staff report that updates the table of questions that we've received and responded to so far. So there's a few additional answers to the questions that came up in last week's study session. I'll note that next week, then, there are a series of actions that are scheduled. Tonight's public comment during the public hearing may help inform what to expect there. And then I'll also note that there was a couple of questions from the Q&A sheet that have been related to the Regional Crisis Response, or RACER agency. As noted in the Q&A, tomorrow night, actually, there is a Principals Assembly meeting, of which Councilmember Aldrich is your primary representative of the Principals Assembly, and fortunately we appointed an alternate with Councilmember Aldrich out traveling, and so Councilmember Dodd will be representing the City Council at the Principals Assembly tomorrow night. We'll get some more facts and figures and be able to provide an update to the Council next week on what was shared, but also in the context of what is included in the proposed in the budget for RACER. With that, our finance staff is present tonight in case council does have any new questions that have come up. We didn't want to deprive the opportunity to ask questions, but we also didn't feel like it was necessarily full study session worthy for us to say our presentation is tell us what you got. So we'll do that here, and if you do have any questions, we'll see if the response tonight is the most appropriate, or if nothing else, I hope we've proven that we take good notes and we'll come back with a response.
Thank you very much. Anybody? All right. Moving on to council committee reports, community reports, and conversations. Councilmember Zorns?
It's a conversation, I guess. You know how it's fun to identify heroes here in the city of Bothell. And we just celebrated Veterans Day yesterday. And a hero that is a little bit unsung hero is Tom Agnew. He was just recognized by the city of Mill Creek and Everett. And the United States Congress recognized him and his fellow 3,400 dust-off members in the Army. 800 are still living. But they are receiving the Congressional Gold Medal, which is the highest medal that can be given to a civilian. There were many. The dust-offs served in Vietnam, and there were many casualties in Vietnam, and some of them are still walking among us today. A fun fact about the Army medics known as dust-offs is our Medic 1 was born out of the work that they did in those war years. And I remember one time talking with Tom about his experience being a dust-off, and he told me we got calls from our American soldiers who needed, medics to come. We got them from South Vietnamese, and we got them from Viet Cong. And my reaction was, Tom, did you answer those calls for the Viet Cong? And he said, yes. And I said, didn't you get shot at? And he goes, we went down 3 times. I'm thinking, one time would do that for me. But not Tom Agnew. And he's been a hero since he was a teenager, and then serving here in Bothell, and is one of those rare people that really exemplifies being what a real gentleman is like. Even if you don't agree with him, he's just always very kind and in having a discussion with you. If it was within my power to name a bridge or a park, Tom Agnew would be in the hopper for that. But for now, he's Bothell's hero.
Councilmember Dodd.
Thanks. Councilmember Zorns, I wanted to thank you for bringing up Mr. Agnew. He is a delight to know, and I've been kind of following his journey with the Congressional Gold Medal on Facebook, and it's pretty exciting. So thank you for bringing that up.
Councilmember Curd.
Thanks. I attended K4C meeting last week, and There were general discussions about the outcome of the general election, as well as talk about what is in store for cities around King County in their climate planning processes in the future. There's some agenda setting, but be on the lookout for invitation for more in-person events and meetings in 2025 from K4C.
Councilmember Dodd?
I forgot that we were also doing reports. So I wanted to remind everyone, we just got another email, or you should have, from Snohomish County Executive Sommers about the Snohomish County Tomorrow General Assembly, and it's been confirmed that is open to everybody. I am also open to carpooling, but please try to attend in person so that we can kind of be represented amongst our peers in Snohomish County. And that's on December 11th, which is a Wednesday.
All right, next up is projected agenda discussion. Does anyone have an item to bring up? In that case, I would love a motion to approve the consent agenda. Councilmember Dodd?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Dodd and a second from Councilmember Curd to approve the consent agenda. Would anybody like to speak to the motion? City Clerk?
Thank you. Please say yes or no when I call your name. Councilmember Zorns?
Yes.
Mayor Thompson?
Yes.
Councilmember Curd?
Yes.
Councilmember Dodd?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Alcabra?
Yes.
Passes 5-0 with Councilmembers Alders and Menke absent and excused.
Thank you very much. All right, Quan, I see you there. I'm sorry, because we are going to take a 10-minute break. It is 6:41. We will be back at 6:51. All right, welcome back. First up is a public hearing related to consider the adoption of the final 2025-2026 biennial budget and related items. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. And we do have two public hearings tonight related to the budget, but I will note that the first one, if anybody has any comments specifically to the city budget, this is your time. And even if you're wrong, it's okay. The second public hearing is the council acting in your capacity as the Emergency Medical Services EMS District Board, and that is very specific to one thing in Snohomish County. So to set the stage, though, so that people know what's what, we're going to have a brief staff report in front of each of these, and they will be distinct from each other. How this is going to work as well is that we are joined by Quan Wong, our finance director. He will lead through the staff report, and then at that point, he'll take a pause and stop talking. The mayor will open the public hearing and we will hear from the public, then close the public hearing. And if there's any questions council has, we can do that after we've heard from the community. With that, I'm going to turn things over to Quan to walk you through some information and background related to the budget. Quan?
Thank you, City Manager. And again, good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and City Council members. So for the first hearing, public hearing, we're going to ask you to take some action, and that is to hold public hearing to consider the adoption of the 2025 to 26 biennial budget and related items. Those include the 1% increase for King County and Snohomish County property tax levies for 2025, the utility rates for 2025 to 26, and then the 25 to 2031 capital facilities plan and the 2025 fee schedule. And just to give the public the overview as well, so for the 2025-26 proposed budget, we have in total both general fund and non-general fund, $208 million to be spent in 2025, and in 26, $171.5 million. The second item is related to the 2025 property tax levy. We do this annually, and our cap is at 1%. But we are asking the council to allow us to increase the 1% plus the new construction. The third item is related to the utility rates, and for the 2025 to 26 increases for the water, we are proposing is 6.25%. For the sewer, 4.25%, and storm and surface water, 5.75%. The next related item is the 25 to 2031 Capital Facilities Plan. The total plan includes about 92 projects, and they total to be about $441 million. And I'm happy to report that 51% the money is going to come from grants and our partners, like the regional Sound Transit. And the last item is the 2025 fee schedule. We are proposing a COLA increase, and the COLA rate for 25 is about 3.6%. So that's the general increase, except for fees that are limited by statute or market conditions or due to cost recovery. Just to touch a little bit on the property tax, I know there's a lot of interest about property owners and how much they are paying to the city as well as the region. But for King County, a majority of the property tax, they fund public schools. In King County, about 57%, they go to both state and our local school districts. For the city of Bothell, we are getting about 17.6%. On the Snohomish side, the schools, they get about 63%, while they contribute to the city about 23.7%. So that's the overall impact of the property tax for next year. And with that, we are asking the council to hold a public hearing to consider the adoption of the 25-26 budget and related items. And then afterwards, we ask you to close the public hearing.
All right, I'm going to open the public hearing and call on the city clerk.
Thank you, Mayor Thompson. We do not have anybody signed up this evening to speak to the public hearing on the budget. However, if anybody in the audience wishes to do so, please step to the podium. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. If you are in the virtual audience, please use the raise hand function and we will panel you in so you have your 3 minutes as well. Does anybody wish to speak to the budget public hearing? Not seeing anybody.
All right. Well, in that case, I'm going to close the public hearing. And we are going to move on to the public hearing regarding adoption of an ordinance to increase the 1% of the EMS levy in the Snohomish County portion of Bothell for 2025. City Manager.
Thank you, and this is where I'll shift my script to say thank you, Chair. So the council is actually going to then take a first action, which is to adjourn your city council meeting for a moment and convene as the Bothell Urban Emergency Medical Services District Board. And then following that, so I will have you call to adjourn. The city clerk will make note of the time, and then we will again adjourn the Emergency Medical Services District Board until next year after that, and we'll continue on with the city council meeting.
All right, I'm going to adjourn the Bothell City Council meeting.
Wonderful. All right.
It's 6. I'm going to let you write the time down.
Yeah, 6:58.
That's what I had to. And I am going to convene the Bothell Urban Emergency Medical Services District Board.
All right, and still as the finance director of Bothell, conveniently enough, Quan Wan.
Thank you, board members. So we're asking you to act as Bothell Urban EMS District Board to hold a public hearing to implement a 1% increase in the emergency medical services levy covering the Snohomish portion of Bothell for 2025. And for the general public, just a little bit background. The Bothell Urban EMS District was created in 2005 to fund the EMS services in the Snohomish County portion of Bothell. The City of Bothell residents who live in the King County portion pay for the EMS through their King County EMS levies. And the 2025 budget, we assumed the EMS levy is increased by 1%. So again, we are asking you to hold a public hearing to implement the 1% increase in the EMS levy for 2025. And afterward, we ask you to close the public hearing.
All right, I'm going to open the public hearing at 6:59 PM. And Board Secretary Hathaway,
Thank you very much.
do we have anybody signed up?
We do not have any signups for this evening's public hearing on the EMS levy. However, I will say again, if anybody in the audience wishes to speak to this, please go to the podium. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. If there's anybody in the virtual audience, please use the raise hand function and we'll panel you in. I do not have anybody. Chair Thompson.
Thank you. In that case, I'm going to close the public hearing at 7 PM. And then I'm going to adjourn the Bothell Urban Emergency Medical Services District and reconvene at 7 o'clock PM and reconvene the Bothell City Council meeting also at 7 o'clock PM. And next up is a study session regarding the downtown sub-area plan update, and we're going to go down there.
Oh, that's it?
I'd say welcome back, but I don't think we actually adjourned. We're just down here now. That's true, but I did that. I adjourned that already. A study session regarding the downtown sub-area plan update, and I'm going to kick it over to the city manager to introduce our presenters.
Thank you, Mayor. I think we may have just participated in my fastest public meeting by minutes. It was a 2-minute long EMS, so that's pretty good. My previous was 4, so well done, well done.
But still room to improve.
That's right. You run a good ship there, sir. We do have 2 study sessions for you tonight. The first is as we're beginning to wrap up the comprehensive planning period. We've been talking for a while now about the actions that we'd take coming out of that. And one, we've talked about an update to the Housing Action Plan, which, as council may recall, that's been one that we've anticipated. And the timeline is, I'll say, fairly straightforward, but that's only because I don't actually do the work, our friends do, but where we've committed to having something in June to council for consideration. How long that takes for you is up to you. But the downtown sub-area plan update is one where we have been discussing bringing this back to have a scoping conversation before the end of the year and to talk through what it would look like so we can kind of design it together. And as you are hearing about it, we'll know what to expect. With that, that is where we're at tonight. I'm going to introduce our Community Development Director, Jason Greenspan, who will kick things off and then lead to further details. So Jason, take it away.
Thank you, City Manager. I'm here this evening with props. I don't often get to see hard copies of plans these days, but we have had these in our office for a number of years, and we rely on them. Yes, we do, even though we have an online version now. So you might have heard we are at the final stages of adopting our comprehensive plan. And one of the key pieces of our comprehensive plan is the downtown plan sub-area. It is the first and the highest priority step for our implementation plan. This will be the first comprehensive update of the downtown plan since it was first adopted in 2009. And why is it important? It is the policy basis, and it undergirds the development regulations that we have in place for downtown. and it is a component and an essential piece of the comprehensive plan itself. I'm here this evening with Eric Jazuski. He is a senior planner in our long-range planning team, and he's going to be serving as the project manager for the downtown plan update. Megan Rigney is also a team member in long-range planning, and she'll be focusing a lot on the community engagement component of the plan. The downtown plan does set a vision, and you'll see in the packet there is a vision statement from 2009, one page out of this larger tome, for what we want downtown to be. And 15 years have passed since that first iteration. So it speaks to urban form, how land is used, at what density, at what intensity will land be used, what the scale of buildings will be, and how to best utilize and activate public spaces. How we address mobility. We now have a multimodal approach for circulation and transportation in the city with the adoption of the new comprehensive plan by the end of this year. So how will people move around the city safely on foot, on bicycles, in transit, and yes, in motor vehicles? Housing. How will households of all sizes and all incomes have a welcoming place and have all their needs met equitably in downtown? For our economy, what kind of businesses are we going to attract and retain in downtown? And balancing all of that type of growth with our natural environment, how growth can be balanced with environmental stewardship. We're initiating an urban forestry management plan, how we can be responsible stewards of our urban tree canopy, and how we address best management practices in low-impact development for stormwater quality. And as I mentioned before, it sets the basis for our local regulations in our code, and it provides the guide rails for growth along with a reliable development process for anything that comes in for applications to build. And when you think of downtown, I think about my first impressions of the city. When I first came to Bothell a couple of years ago, my impression was McMinimans and Bothell Way and walking to a coffee shop. But everybody, when they do their mental mapping of downtown, has a different feeling for what defines downtown. So as a reminder, downtown is pretty expansive. We have larger retail service centers that have Rite Aid and QFC. They're technically part of our downtown district. UW Bothell and Cascadia campus. Areas that extend west along 522 towards Kenmore, as well as the villas at Beardsley. So it's a pretty expansive footprint that we have planned for and that we want to update. So Erica is going to talk about the process for updating the plan and some timelines. And just to be assured, we're going to weave this process into these other initiatives, such as the Housing Action Plan, Urban Forestry Management Plan, and a Climate Action Plan, so that they're not siloed into their own planning initiatives. Ultimately, tonight, we really want your feedback on your priorities to help us craft, number one, the community engagement strategy, and number two, the scope of work. And with that, I'll hand over to Eric.
Thank you for that introduction, Jason. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and council members. My name is Eric Jazuski, Senior Long Range Planner in the Community Development Department. Of course, I'll be presenting on the Downtown Subarea Plan Update Project. Also want to just introduce my colleague, Planner Megan Rigney is back there, who Jason mentioned will be your project team in community development. You'll have more time to speak with her, I think, at the next meeting on this topic. Before I dive into the presentation, I'd just like to share a little bit about my professional experience since I'm new to working at the city and new to the city council here. I'm from Northern California, earned my bachelor's degree in city and regional planning from UC Davis. I have about 7 years of combined land use planning experience spent with the city of San Francisco and Pierce County. In those roles, I worked on long-range planning, transportation, environmental review, sustainability, housing affordability, and code development. I also have 3.5 years of transit and active transportation planning experience, again spent with the San Francisco Municipal Transportation Agency and Pierce Transit. For today's study session, we're seeking your input on and feedback on the project phases, schedule, and engagement approach. No action is required. Some background on the current downtown plan, which was adopted in 2009 and amended periodically. The sub-area spans from the SR 522 bend to QFC and Rite Aid up in the northwest, and from the Sammamish River to the UW Cascadia College campus. The plan's intention was to orchestrate private and public investments, regulate land use and development, plan city actions in support of growth and revitalization. You can see the sub-area land use map on the right. Might be a little hard to see, but the colors are representing certain planned areas or land use designations. The actual downtown, Bothell downtown, is identified in the downtown core in red, the downtown neighborhood in brown, and the downtown transition designation in yellow. The original plan's vision statement is quite wide-ranging. It aims to make downtown a place to go and be the community's meeting place. Accordingly, it seeks to enhance the essential publicness of the downtown environment, connect downtown to the Sammamish River as well as the UW Cascadia College campus, maintain the area as a distinctive town center, enhance multimodal mobility and connections, protect the quality of life of residential neighborhoods, and ensure development remains sustainable and environmentally responsible. A lot has changed in downtown since 2009, as I'm sure you're all aware, since the sub-area plan was adopted. Major changes since then include the Bothell-Everett Highway Multi-Way Boulevard, a transformative and regionally significant project, the SR 522 realignment through downtown, new City Hall building, redevelopment, and new development of high-density residential and mixed-use buildings. And then, of course, as Jason mentioned, the Imagine Bothell Comprehensive Plan was a pretty significant change that may be adopted soon, and so that will be informing this effort. You can see how this change played out in the area's residential and commercial data here. Just a big note that these numbers are more generic in terms of a wider area, not just for downtown. The census data, population and housing includes some of Lower Maywood, and the tax data is for just the King County segment of the city of Bothell. So downtown isn't all these numbers, but I think that you see the growth in it. I would say it represents a similar growth pattern as the rest of the area. Obviously, significant population and housing growth since 2009. And to my understanding, downtown on its own has grown by over 3,000 people. Again, in the King County part of Bothell, which includes downtown, taxable retail sales also grew significantly. And I think you can reasonably assume that downtown retail sales growth followed a similar trajectory percentage-wise. Yes? Sure.
Oh, sorry. Taxable retail sales, is that just for the businesses that are within the downtown core, or is that also including people who have ordered online?
I think it could include people that ordered that live in downtown, so definitely.
Okay, thank you.
As far as I can tell, the tax data, I couldn't quite get it super granular, so.
Okay.
Again, an impression, but
Okay,
not
that would be
exact.
good information to know.
And we are,
how-
in the economic vitality plan, our consultant is doing some of the drill down as much as we can, and so we may have some better information
That would be
related
really
to
helpful.
retail specific.
Then we'll know how they're doing. Thank you.
Thanks for that. So why update the downtown plan? Obviously, it's an implementation action in the comprehensive plan, but I think it's also important to update it in order to achieve the growth that the comprehensive plan envisioned, which you can see here is about 1,900 residential units and about 700,000 commercial square feet. Also, to learn from the past 15 years and prepare for downtown's future, to leverage the new high-capacity transit system that's coming online through downtown, to maximize return on the city's public investments, and engage downtown residents, workers, and businesses in this update, especially those that are new since 2009. And finally, incorporate diversity, equity, and inclusion principles throughout the plan as well as the engagement effort. The sub-area plan project will ensure alignment with the City Council's vision, the Economic Vitality Plan, public space activation efforts, Park at Bothell Landing project, and other upcoming long-range plan projects that Jason referenced. You can see the project phases and schedule on this slide, one of those items that I'm asking for feedback from the City Council on. Phase 1, project preparation, involves gathering background information, preparing a community profile, planning community engagement, and establishing a preliminary scope. Those are the last two items, the community engagement plan and the preliminary scope, I think are something we're going to come back to City Council on to flush out at least the initial plan for both of those. Phase 2, conditions analysis, involves assembling descriptive information of the area, updated, of course, from the last 15 years, and an inventory of existing conditions, reviewing trends, and providing a gaps needs analysis in multiple areas. Phase 3, public outreach, specifically visioning and scoping the plan. These specific efforts will be defined in that engagement plan that we're coming back to City Council with soon. Phase 4 will be plan drafting and impact analysis, and preparing the draft plan and associated regulations, environmental review, policy review, equity review, and potentially an early action might be adopting a planned action ordinance, which would streamline additional development in downtown. Phase 5, public outreach. So this is the reviewing phase. So, collecting people's comments on the draft plan and regulations and environmental review, and then revising the plan and regulations and the environmental review as appropriate. Phase 7, plan adoption and closeout, pretty self-explanatory, involves, of course, Planning Commission, City Council, and potentially other boards and commissions review. Finally, plan monitoring and reporting. This is, again, tracking how we're doing on those goals and those initiatives that are in the updated plan, development, things like that. Should go without saying, but we'll also check in regularly with Council and Planning Commission on the progress of this project. I also want to note the schedule shown up here is preliminary and may be subject to change. I think what's most important is, again, we hear from our decision makers, hear from the community, and the plan will follow from that, hopefully in 2 years, maybe less, maybe longer, but this is our estimate here for now. So, just a taste of the community engagement. Wanted to share our goals. Again, the engagement plan will be coming later, but initially we're thinking about, goal number 1 is to engage as many people as feasible, including downtown residents and businesses. Incorporate diversity, equity, and inclusion by reaching out to marginalized and disproportionately impacted communities and conveying the public input we receive faithfully to decision makers. Next steps with respect to City Council and Planning Commission will be to return with a draft community engagement strategy and a preliminary plan scope for feedback and revision. The plan scope may address things such as sub-area boundaries, public space and activation, transportation and parking, incorporating housing strategies from the Housing Action Plan, urban greening strategies from the Urban Forest Management Plan, climate strategies from the Climate Action Plan. Once again, today we're seeking your input on the project phases and schedule I presented earlier, as well as initial thoughts on engagement as we prepare that plan in the coming months. No action is required today, again. So, I appreciate your time, and I will hand it back over to the council for discussion and questions.
Thank you for the presentation and welcome to the city. Glad that you're here. This is a big undertaking, and it's exciting to be in on the ground level before even any outreach is done, because I know we all have had a lot of ideas over the last, since we've been involved with city business, about what our downtown can be, and we're hearing about it in the comprehensive plan work, and so it's exciting to take the next step and look a little bit more closely at the downtown area. As part of the project preparations, will there be easily digestible summaries of prior efforts to plan in the downtown sub-area? And I'm just thinking, like, there's a lot of history. And we have tons of new neighbors who it would be really helpful for them to know about that history going forward. And some of the history is, buried in public meetings and long documents. I'm hopeful that maybe this is more outreach talk, but I'm hopeful that during this initial preliminary fact-finding phase, we do some brief summary on how we got to where we are now and some of the impetus behind revisiting.
So yes, that is, we're considering that. I think, some of these initial phases here, project preparation, gathering background information, community profile, inventory of existing conditions, trends, that's kind of speaking to the changes in the last 15 years. So I think sort of the initial idea is that information will be, available in boards or some easily digestible medium at the phase 3 public outreach. So, community members can read it or not, and hopefully that would inform some of their thoughts and ideas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's really helpful to have just as sort of a gut check, depending on whether, everybody has their own experiential knowledge and understanding of what downtown looks like, but having it written out so that we're all working from a common understanding will be really helpful. So looking forward to that.
I can go. Get comfortable. I have a few things. First question, overall, this touches obviously every part of our downtown, and there's one piece of it that I've had a special interest in doing for some time, and I know there's a desire to do that on council, and that's looking at our pedestrianized block and looking at how we want our downtown to be in terms of walkability, what we're doing for pedestrianization, how we're actually improving that to make it better and potentially expanding those zones. Is there a way we can, what does phasing look like for this? Because we've obviously got a lot of work to do in 2 years of this plan. Really what I want to know is, can we do that first?
Well, I think one thing we can do is, once we've identified those pieces that we want to move forward, are there elements that can be brought to the fore, and especially to get community feedback on? And those areas that probably feel the most visceral to the community, pedestrianization and the use of public space, is something that we could prioritize as part of the engagement process so that you have the benefit clearly of feedback, for sure.
Perfect. And I guess what would the outgrowth of that look like? Obviously in this, we're looking at what do we want this to look like? But when it comes time to actually, let's say we want to pedestrianize that street and we want to provide improvements to make it better. What do the improvements process look like? Is that something we have to wait for the plan to get done and then we hire a consultant and go do? Or how do we get to doing things?
I do think that as we scope the project out, we could identify areas where we do some conceptual plans that provide the impetus and the wherewithal for the city to make decisions on capital projects in the future and how to leverage grant opportunities. This is a process where even if you look at the plan that we have, there are a variety of concepts that can be those launching pads for something much more specific. And so that this isn't just a paper exercise, it's a way to really set projects in motion. But that isn't the project in itself. That capital project in the future, should that be something we proceed with, or any capital project in downtown, could use this as the basis.
Okay.
For sure.
The only thing I'd add to that too, I think that's a great answer, is that there's then that push-pull balance between, we're going through our capital facilities plan process, and we've seen what the volume of ideas are there and what the expenditure is. But at the same time, we also know that there have been things that have been accelerated and that council has asked for in the last couple of years that we're able to do. So, for example, the temporary activation of Lot E, F, and G. So I think it depends on the scope and the scale of what is discovered and what we want to do. And I think with as thinking forward, I think what this plan helps do is thinking about what the trajectory of change might be. And so if there's a long-term goal that is going to have to be something that is CFP funded and might take some years to get there, if there's an interim step that can be taken that's consistent with that, so that we can really try things out and see like what works. I think, again, thinking about EF and G, one of the things that makes that project so appealing is that we're also going through the master planning for the park that's just across the highway. And so there are concepts and things that we can try that maybe, if it really catches on and we hear from the community of like, we love this, that gives us inspiration for where else in the community we can take that concept. So I think similarly, like that would be some short-term thinking to think about in terms of what we might see in downtown, and then in the long range would be where we get to go through the next public hearing of budgets and that sort of a thing.
Got it. Just, I guess my feedback would be this conversation around opening up the downtown plan really started just because we've had that pedestrian street closed since 2020. We're almost at 2025, and all we've done is put up some signs and some eco blocks and said, don't drive here anymore. And I am very anxious for us to do something with that space and improve it, because I think just like as it sits, it's definitely not my vision of what it could be, and I think a lot of people in our community would generally agree. So since we have been talking about this for years now, trying to figure out when we get to do something about that, my initial feedback would be like, that's kind of how this conversation started, and I'm very anxious to do that part. So as we do timeline. That was my first one. Sorry. Yeah. I have a couple questions and a couple comments kind of interspersed. So I'm just going to go through them. Big picture, when we do the downtown plan, like I think we should build neighborhoods that prioritize the people who live there, including downtown. And I think in downtown, there's often an assumption that we need to prioritize a space for other people to go drive through, as opposed to prioritize for the space that for the people that live there. And I know that I would not like to optimize my neighborhood for other people to drive through. I would like to optimize it for those of us who live there. And I'd just like to take that view with downtown, because our downtown neighbors deserve the same respect and thoughtfulness that any of us would like for our neighborhoods. Just like we did with the overall zoning map, and staff did a great job with this, I would love to simplify our downtown zoning. We have, I think, 5 different downtown zonings. I spoke with somebody last week that has a lot that is part one zone and part another zone, and they're like, what do I do? And I'm like, that is not a question I can answer for you. Please talk to our planning department. So I would just say, I would like to focus on just building a downtown rather than trying to figure out how we taper and smooth and get really strict about height limits and differences on a granular, like block to block level. I would just like to build a downtown, and include the downtown. And I understand that we might not have the exact same zoning and code everywhere in the entire sub area, but I would love it to be more simple than it is right now. Big picture, like seeing 3-story apartment buildings go up feels like we wasted 2 stories. Like that we could have gotten with stick-built housing and somebody would have loved to build, and there's an apartment building there and it could be 2 stories higher and we could have more housing in the exact same footprint. And that's more customers, that's more neighbors, that's more friends, that's more of all the good stuff that we want. I would love to look at incentives for cool, nerdy environmental stuff like cross-laminated timber, mass timber, passive house, any other environmentally friendly construction types. I know some of those don't pencil out at lower stories. Like I would love our zoning to be able to accommodate, mass timber tower if somebody wanted to build it down there. I'd love to see us look at height limits, and I would love to see us maybe remove those for a cross-laminated timber building, something like that. Do the current height limits in downtown max out stick-built construction with a concrete podium?
I can get back to you on that. I don't know that we necessarily would penalize someone for that podium story per se. On the other hand, I don't know that someone gets a benefit from height because they're utilizing a podium. There's a certain level of activation that's
Yeah.
required at that first story. So I can get back to you on
Okay.
that. And as you mentioned, and I have Dave Boyd on speed dial when I have a question about the downtown regulations.
From the beach somewhere.
Yes,
Yeah.
but simplifying how height regulations are interpreted for downtown is something I think that staff would certainly welcome.
Good. I like that. Realistically, though, what I don't want to do is I don't want to waste vertical space in a building that's going to stand for 100 years. Like, most of what we're doing with zoning, this is not for us. This is for our kids and for their kids and how they're going to experience Bothell. And I don't want to look back 20 years from now and think we could have built more in the exact same location. We just chose not to. Lastly, for this section, be creative. Like, we want to hear your best ideas. Like, you've got the council vision. You know what we want to accomplish. We want to have more neighbors. We want to have a more vibrant place with cool stuff going on. You guys are the pros, so bring us your good ideas. Like, be creative. Like, if there's some cool thing that you're like, I'd really like to do this, and like nobody does that, like, tell us about it. Like, I love doing that kind of thing, and I'd love us to be on the forefront of what's possible. Somebody has to prove what a post-suburban built environment looks like. Like, why not us? I have a whole lot of suggestions about pedestrian streets, and this does not seem like the meeting to talk about that. This is higher level, big picture.
Correct, yeah, we're trying to focus on the overall process here, and I think a future meeting will dive into all these elements of that the plan might include.
Okay, cool.
But certainly if a conversation before that happens would be helpful to, since you have the information, we'd hate to lose it, so we can also set something off offline.
Cool, I can send that over. Lastly, community engagement. I think it's really important we engage our community on this, but I'm always frustrated when community engagement is binary. Like, do you want this thing or that thing? There's not nuance there. There's not a chance for people to explain a positive vision for what they want to see. So I would love to see our community engagement phrased in a way that is, what do you want this to be? What do you want to do there? Like, how would that work for you? Not in a sense of what do you not want to see there, or do you want to do this thing or not, or this thing or this other thing. So I would just love to know how people want to use downtown, how they see a downtown, how they engage with it. And I would love to be able to separate out in our public engagement the people that live in the downtown sub area versus the people who don't. Because again, I think we should build any neighborhood for the people that live there. And obviously we exist in a real world, and the downtown is a place where people go, and we need to accommodate that, and we're doing our best to accommodate that. But and I'm not saying we don't take those other things into account. Just I want to prioritize the people who live there. I think that's what I got.
Can I jump in? One, both of you with the comments about community engagement. So important, because I was part of that community when the 2009 was coming together, and it was very frustrating for people. I'm talking about my neighborhood because I'm part of this area, to know what the city was doing when. So community engagement, yes. And then I like the idea of maybe, because we want to listen to people and we want to not just, I got very good at knowing what phrases were patting me on the head to make me feel like I was being listened to, but I heard them enough times I was like, okay, they're trying to signal that they heard me, but they want me to move on. So I don't know if we can give community options, like, do you like Plan A or Plan B? I don't know how you give people choices and having them heard, but whatever magic you can have happen would be great. And then the other thing is, I was part of the decision, and I still like it. I just don't see it thriving, and that's the closing of Main Street. And at one point, a couple times, we've talked about having a traffic study, the impact on Main Street. And I don't know if that study is still in the works, but it shouldn't be the driving factor, but it would be good information to know that what are we gaining, what are we losing as we decide what is, if you think of the city as a body with a circulation, what is healthy? What is the circulation that has us the most healthy? And what kind of adjustments do we need to make to maximize downtown health? So I don't know if we're still talking about a traffic study. We had a couple times.
There's, so not for sure if I'm addressing what you're talking about, depending on when that study was contemplated, but within the comprehensive plan, there was traffic modeling that took place with the assumption of Main Street remaining closed, so we can get some more information of what modeled into that. But that's been one of the transportation elements, portions of the discussion. We know where it has helpful consequence, where it might not. There may be some deeper scope of that within this, so we'll see. One of the things I was going to save to the end, but we'll just say I think this is a great example of where we see how efforts like this are so connected throughout multiple departments of organizations. So while we're represented by community development tonight, and there's certainly a hefty planning effort, we do have economic vitality as part of this. We have public works as part of this. We have our police department, our fire department. This is something that our finance department, we talked about how we're going to pay for it. There's certainly connections to all of our work. So we'll see if that's something that's needed.
No, I appreciate that. When we're talking about, economic vitality, what we've heard a lot from people who have storefronts on Main Street is they miss the traffic going by and the visibility that they used to have with Main Street open, and then now that it's closed. And I go through downtown a lot, and I just get so frustrated about seeing what used to be a lot of foot traffic back when cars were going up and down Main Street. Maybe all that foot traffic is going in the back door entrances. I've tossed out, and a couple times, is there a happy medium of being able to close Main Street, but having it as a one-way street as a circulation? I don't know what the answer is, but knowing the pros and cons of all the ways that we can finesse Main Street and still make all the good things happen as far as walkability and bikes going through on Main Street and making it safe would be really helpful to at least have that discussion and say, so when we have, occasionally people will have opinions about what we've done with Main Street. And it would be nice to be able to say to them, council talked about that in particular, and this is what when we were measuring the pros and cons of it, this is what we concluded. So it's a long-winded way of saying, I would love to study all the options for Main Street traffic, just so that we can have the best decision possible for Main Street. I think that's it. Oh, and keep the community involved. It's a great nudge. Thank you.
It sounds like you'd like to prioritize having that conversation sooner rather than later in the process as well.
I'm really excited to break into this. I was, 2009 was a long time ago, it feels like. And I had no idea this plan was happening back then, to be honest. I was 2 or 3 years out of high school, and it just wasn't the focus of my life, civic engagement. I also had gotten, I'm thinking about, before the changes, there was a licensing place where I got my first driver's license right there that's not there anymore. It's pretty different. But to me, the downtown transformation is what kept me in Bothell as an adult, because I wasn't too keen on living here as a teenager. There's a lot of cool stuff. I Also, one of the things that I've been curious about with the existing Subarea plan, the mayor brought up just how many zones there are in what we call downtown. I would love really clear sort of like maybe take that giant booklet that I'm sure is being treated to preserve for all of time into sort of like, this is why we have, you know, the general downtown corridor, or this is why we have the downtown transition zone. What were the goals that we were trying to meet with the zoning and the requirements that we have there? And then, like, did we accomplish those goals with the zoning? And how do those conflict or not with our, you know, our updated comprehensive plan, with our you know, urban forestry goals, which I realize we don't have a plan yet, but we do all have a clear, like, we want to preserve trees, and every tree that like, if we don't build housing here, it's going to actually encroach on big forests in our natural areas, right? So honoring both that we need an urban tree canopy and a better one, but also we don't want to be tearing down forests in other parts of the state. So I'm really, it's a tough conversation to have, right? But I'm really curious about that. And then with community engagement, I also really liked what the mayor said, and I'm not going to talk on everything you said, I promise. But I really liked bringing up that just saying, like, do you like plan A or plan B isn't really it. It's what do you want to do in this space? How do you see yourself using this space? And then also just getting out of the mindset of this is what I want to do in 6 months here. It's what do you want your kids to do here, right? Like, how are they going to afford to live here or visit here? And one of the things that I would love to see us focus on is how to bring more commercial and retail space to this zone. Every time we have a big like apartment building go up and there isn't ground floor retail, I am very sad, because I've known a lot of people who've wanted to start businesses who just can't. They can't get a lease to say, you know, to get in there. So the more we can do to encourage that is really important. And hopefully we can see some of that in the plan. And the timeline looks great, which I think is your actual question. Thank you.
Thank you, and welcome to Bothell. Yeah, I know. Thank you for doing this, and thank you for bringing us in. As Councilmember Curd said, that the ground floor is good to be involved from the beginning. As I was looking at this, I couldn't just remember what it looked like in the new FLUM, or it is I shouldn't be saying new because it is flume with the 2 dots at the top. So it would be good to just have that and see how the compare and contrast, because it's related to what was just mentioned about how can we simplify the view for us at this high level, you know. If this makes sense.
This represents what is in the current comp plan flume right up on the screen.
Oh, is that what it looks like?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh man. All right. So we should have looked.
Yeah, this is about as granular as our plan gets. We didn't really touch the land use designations very much, if at all, in downtown, knowing that this was coming. So.
Oh, I see. Okay. Well, thank you. Well, it's good. Then we have some talking to do. It seems like as was mentioned before. The other thing, the high level thing that I also mentioned, because it was hinted at, but not necessarily, you know, specifically. I mean, anything we do with downtown affects the areas surrounding downtown. I don't know if it makes sense to include a view around. We can set a distance or whatever and agree that that's good enough. To how does that affect traffic, pedestrian, people, resident, whatever it is that the variables we're going to be looking at. Because, for example, I live literally 10 minutes up the hill. I walk down the hill, but I'm not in downtown. So how does that, changing things here, how does that affect me or my neighbors, or how does things happening in my neighborhood affect what happens in downtown? So just something like that, like at the high level, if it makes sense to include these things. And you did hit on in slide 10, you mentioned, you had the phases, but as you were talking, because the question I have is like, how are the dependencies, like the housing action plan, is that going to be done in time for you to be able to make decisions early on that affect the whole timeline, you know, so.
I mean, I think my idea is, you know, not to rush it. So making sure everything lines up, and, you know, I know that the council's seeing the comp plan and it's like January 1st, let's do it. And there's a lot of things that council's not able to do because of that. And I think that, this can be different because there's not really a big driving schedule force behind it necessarily. So
It sounded like there might be some aspects of it that we might have to look at sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
As was suggested earlier. Yeah, the economic vitality plan, because that was mentioned, housing action plan. But yeah, so just being cognizant as we go through the phases, the dependencies of this project plan, right? So, thank you.
I've got a process question just for the folks that are watching at home or who might not be aware of planning processes. I'm assuming that this is going to come with an EIS. Can you explain a little bit more about what triggers an environmental impact statement and what people can expect to be looking at in the later phases of the plan and reviewing?
Well, with environmental review, it depends, right? So the original plan did have an EIS done, depending on, how much of a change this one is compared to that. It could be a simple addendum, for example, to that original EIS. I think or it could be a supplemental EIS or a new EIS. It's all really dependent on what's the scope that this plan is covering, right? Are we just doing some text updates, including some new projects? Is that it? Well, maybe that's not an EIS, but, we're talking about maybe changing the land use or changing the size of downtown, for example, that could trigger that. So it's hard to say at this point, but I think the idea is if there's any more than paperwork level of environmental review, that will be incorporated into the public engagement throughout. So.
Thank you so much. We're really excited to get this project started. And as Eric mentioned, we'll be back soon with a more detailed approach on community engagement to get your feedback on that. This has been very helpful for us.
We'll definitely follow up too to talk about the phasing within the phasing of what does some of this look like. I think some of the feedback that I heard really does start off with the community engagement of talking to stakeholders, making sure we know who they are, what they represent, but then also looking at what are some near-term wins and what are the long-term changes too. So it's always a good reminder of looking at a document like this, and I have a copy in my office too, just because I've been waiting for tonight really, and it's a good reminder. But thinking about the 2009 efforts when maybe we weren't as actively paying attention to what was going on within planning and civic engagement in our community. And then you see what are the things that are happening to this point. I mean, it feels like a long time, but then you realize, wow, okay, so this has set the table for this work. And so as we do any sorts of updates or changes, I mean, I think there's that aspect too of there's some things that we'll get to see quickly, and then there are some things that might be a visit over coffee in the future where we go, wow, do you remember that in 2025? So really appreciate the work. I see the mayor has his microphone back on, but I will just real quick before I stop talking, just again, thank you, Eric, for joining us. Megan, thank you for being here. Ray is another one of our newer planners. We have a great planning team in community development, and it's been great to have 3 new voices that were added recently. Thank you to council for the support of that as well.
And thank you for responding to that and hiring them, because we've been looking forward to having a few more folks in that department for a long time as well. So welcome. We might not seem like it, but we're very happy you're here. That'll usually be like you'll show up and be like, cool, we're doing the thing you asked for. And then I'm like, but could it be faster? And city manager, I just wanted to, I didn't acknowledge what you said earlier when you pointed out what we've done with Lot EFG and how responsive staff was in getting something going on. So just know that I hear you and appreciate that. And when I say I want to do this first, it's not because I think it won't happen.
No, I think it's a great reminder of what can be done too. So really not a fishing for a thank you, but more in terms of like we can, when there's an idea and there's an opportunity, sometimes there will be this doesn't make sense, but when it does, you're going to hear that too. So just a good reminder of there are things we can try, and sometimes that's worth a lot.
I'm into that. You sure you don't want to go?
He wants to take a break.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It is 7:49 p.m. We are going to take an 11-minute break until 8 o'clock. All right, welcome back. Next up is a study session related to proposed ordinance regarding acquisition by condemnation of property necessary for Phase 1 of the Bothell Way Multimodal Improvements Project. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. And another pretty sizable project here tonight. We've been talking about Bothell Way as almost as long as I've been here, and I know you were talking about it before, so this is another one of where there's some longevity here. But we are at a key point in this project of where things are starting to happen and move forward and become a little bit more concrete. So tonight what we wanted to do is to have a study session to talk through a proposed ordinance regarding the acquisition by condemnation of property for Phase 1, just Phase 1. There are more phases to come, so we'll see that tonight as well, of Bothell Way, the Multimodal Improvements Project, and really orient you to some of the next steps that are going to happen. I know there will be a discussion, too, of some of the public outreach that's going on in terms of outreach to affected business owners and property owners along the way. So you'll hear more about that tonight. Happy to answer questions, and then if there's anything we need to do for follow-up, we'll do that as well. We're joined tonight by Deputy Director of Public Works, Jacqueline Brandenburg, who's also our interim director for days to come. Her reign is coming to a close. She's been doing great work. Our senior planner, Robert McCadden, is also here. He is overseeing this project. And I know we also, waiting in the wings in case there's any questions in the front row, we have Jason Torrey, our capital division manager, too. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to staff to walk us through a little bit about what's happening for Bothell Way.
Thank you, Kyle. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and council members. I'd like to thank you in advance for taking the time this evening to hear about and discuss a future condemnation ordinance in support of the Bothell Way Multimodal Improvement Project. As Kyle mentioned, no council action is being requested this evening. Staff is requesting feedback on the proposed condemnation ordinance that will be presented to council at a future date. Project overview. The Bothell Way Multimodal Improvement Project is proposing the following improvements between Reeder Way and 240th Street Southeast. To widen Bothell Way from 2 to 3 lanes to 4 to 5 lanes to facilitate bus rapid transit. Provide new sidewalks on both sides of the roadway. Provide new crossing locations. A 2-way protected bike lane on the east side of the roadway. New transit stops to facilitate the Swift Green Line extension, which is planned after project completion. Managed access control for driveways. Provisions for U-turns and associated illumination, signalization, fish passable culverts with viewpoints and landscaping. This is the project timeline right here. We are currently between 30 and 60% design stages, and as is shown on the figure, we're currently within the early right-of-way phase of the project. Right-of-way fund obligations and early right-of-way expenditures are due to WashDOT in June of 2025. The project is currently scheduled for construction between the fall of 2027 and the winter of 2031. This figure here shows the project phases. Phase 1 goes from Reeder Way to approximately the intersection with 192nd. This is the sequencing phase of the project that we're focusing on for tonight's discussion. Phase 2 goes from the Snohomish-King County line to 240th Street Southeast. And Phase 3, that fills in the gap between phases 1 and 2 from 192nd to the county line. This figure is zoomed in on Phase 1 of the project and shows the specific parcels that will be affected temporarily and or permanently by the project. And there's a couple of different highlights in here. The red is a an approximation of the project footprint, and then the green just highlights the entirety of all the parcels that are affected by the acquisitions in some way. More detailed information on the actual acquisition areas is included in the right-of-way plan attachments within your council packets. There are 3 types of acquisitions the project will be seeking. We have temporary and permanent. Temporary construction easements will provide necessary private property access to construct the improvements and will allow the project to construct improvements on private property that are necessary to tie in the new right-of-way improvements. Then we have permanent easements. We have 3 types of permanent easements that are involved in this project: slope easements, utility easements, and stream easements. The slope easement allows for the construction and maintenance of a slope on private property that's necessary to tie in property grades that are either above or below the adjacent right-of-way grades. The utility easement allows for the construction and maintenance of utilities on private property. And the stream easement allows for construction and maintenance of stream channels and their associated buffers on private property. And the last type of acquisition that we have is the permanent property acquisitions, which is the area that's necessary for the project footprint. So as we've gone through are going through the design process, we're taking some actions to try and minimize private property impact as much as possible. A few of the things that we have done to date include providing 2-way separated bike lane on one side of the roadway versus having 1 lane on each side. We've narrowed the vehicular lanes, and we've narrowed the planter strips in some locations to minimize private property impact. As far as public property owner outreach that has been completed to date, we had 2 virtual community workshops in 2022, one in February and one in March. Then between September and October of 2022, there was a virtual open house. In May of 2024, there was an in-person open house. And starting in August of 2024, we've begun having property owner meetings, and those are ongoing. To date, we have met with 26 of the 29 owners of affected properties. Meetings with the remaining property owners will occur in the near future, and these remaining properties only have relatively minor slope easements and/or temporary construction easements proposed for their properties. So far, property owners have in general been understanding of the project and the need for the additional right-of-way. During the property owner meetings, we introduced the project, shared the preliminary right-of-way plan for the property owner's property, informed them of next steps, and listened to any project-related concerns that they had. Some of the main concerns that were raised during property owner meetings include the loss of trees or other landscaping elements on residential lots, as we heard from Mary and LaDawn early during the public comment period. And then for the commercial properties, it's loss of parking have been the major concerns for them. And then everyone has, some minor concerns about construction impacts as well. The next steps as far as property owner outreach goes is to work with the designers to find solution to property owner concerns as much as feasible. Pass the eminent domain ordinance, perform appraisals, start negotiations, and then settlement or final action. Some information on eminent domain. An eminent domain is the authority that federal, state, or city governments have to take private property for public use with just compensation. It's governed by the Uniform Relocation Assistance and Real Property Acquisitions Policies Act. There is a possible tax benefit for the property value increase when it's sold. and the Washington Administrative Code provides for possible REIT relief. And just want to highlight that it's only exercised if negotiations are unsuccessful. Our goal is to negotiate all these acquisitions with the property owners, hear their concerns, address their concerns. That's what we hope for. And yeah, this is, I guess, I kind of covered this in the last slide, but the acquisition process itself involves the property appraisals, property offers, negotiations, settlement, and then condemnation if negotiations are unsuccessful. And this slide is on the right-of-way funding estimate. For Phase 1, the right-of-way costs are estimated to be $14 million, and that includes the right-of-way purchase cost, easement cost, other damages, service fees, contingencies, and escalation. And once again, no council action is being requested this evening. This is just a study session to let the council know about the project and hear your concerns, answer any questions you may have. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Robert. And I'll just note that, again, this is a project at a pretty large scale of where we exercise this. We've seen some smaller scale projects that I think have come before you before, but this one's a little bit bigger. And so we did feel like a study session to have conversations. There might be some questions that would be better we'll follow up with you on later, but if there are any questions specific to this project or the acquisition we're going through, and especially as you may begin as we're doing outreach, that also means that people will reach out to you. So happy to answer any questions that help you contextualize the work that's about to be done.
I have a couple of questions. Is there any, it may not be, is there any possibility, not that it would be the best option, but is there any possibility to start Phase 2 while we're still completing Phase 1, or are we as a city going to complete Phase 1 and then get Phase 2 going? I'm just doing the math on how many years it's going to take to get this done.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the construction process or the construction timeline, call it late 2027, very late 27 to 31. Is for construction. As far as rephasing, I would probably defer to Jacqueline or Rita or Jason.
I will phone a friend on this one.
Yeah, so as you know, the project's quite large and very expensive, and it's been an exercise in acquiring the grant funding for this. And so the phasing plan we've put together and schedule for design and construction is all very contingent on the grant funding we've gotten available. And we currently have phasing to build Phase 1 and Phase 2 at the same time, Phase 1 and Phase 3 at the same time.
No, sorry, Phase 1 and Phase 2 together.
Phase 1 and Phase 2 together, thank you.
Okay.
So,
Sorry, Phase 3 is the
Sometimes the friend phone. That's right.
Sorry,
There's very few projects that one person actually works on. I think you probably know that.
Can you pull out that map?
Pull up the map.
Pull out the map.
Oh.
So there are 3 phases altogether, and Phase 1 and Phase 2 will go together,
Okay.
and then Phase 3. But if we can get, so currently we are still short of funding for Phase 3 construction.
Okay.
If we can get more grant funds for Phase 3, and we would like to construct all 3 phases together.
That's fabulous to hear. So it's a money detail.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. You guys have all kinds of free time on your hand to handle all 3 projects. It's just money. Okay. That's really helpful. Thank you. So I might see it done before I'm dead. Those are just really good.
I'll note that next week we are bringing forward your state legislative agenda. So
Okay.
keep that in mind for next week.
Yes, very good point. And then the other thing, you had mentioned, you were talking about all the things that were going to be included in this, the bike lane, et cetera, and you mentioned passable culverts and viewpoints. Is that for the Phase 1 section, or are you thinking more of that happening in the Phase 3 section? It's the viewpoints that I.
Yeah, it's my understanding, like the primary one, the kind of, the culvert crossing that originated that thought was the one that's closest to downtown, before you get to, like, right past Seattle Children's. But I believe it's going to be added to all the culverts.
Kind of Rite Aid-ish property, because I think doesn't Horse Creek go under part of Rite Aid or something like that?
It does. The first culvert, so you have Rite Aid, and then you have the convenience store, and then there's Seattle Children's.
Right.
And on the north side of Seattle Children's is where the
Okay.
first culvert's going to be.
Okay, so there might be a viewing area.
Yes.
That is great. Okay, that was just an aside that caught my ear. Thank you.
Thanks for talking to us about this. It's obviously exciting, and then you're like, pace yourself. It's going to be a minute. I did have maybe a random question, but one of the things you mentioned was managed access for driveways. What is that exactly?
So managed access will be a barrier, so you can't go out and cross a lane of traffic and take a left, and so it would just be right, and that kind of ties in with the U-turns as well. So there's U-turns, so people don't have to go all the way down to 522 or wherever to turn around. There'll be places to turn around intermittently.
I appreciate being able to turn around and get where you're going, but also not. Sometimes it's hairy across the existing 3 lanes. I can imagine it even, being that much worse. So very much appreciated. And then the other question was with all of the acquisition that we're doing. Is there any property at this point that would be a total acquisition, or is it just portions of properties?
So that's something that the appraisers evaluate, because there's a lot of reasons that an entire property could be condemned. You could need the right-of-way where the physical building is. We don't have any properties like that. And then, of course, you could be taking parking that limits the potential use of that property afterwards. That could result. But the appraisers are ultimately going to make that determination.
Okay, that makes sense. I thought it might be too early.
A process that the tenants are also encouraged to be involved in with the appraisal, so they can explain how their property is used to the appraisers.
Cool. Thank you very much.
How much space are we talking for right-of-way acquisition on each side? Like linear feet?
It varies across the whole project. I was looking at a few specific properties today, actually, and it was 14 to 20 feet, but this is just in one area. It really varies quite a bit.
Okay.
Rita, do you have anything? Generalization?
That's right. Yes.
Okay, that's a range. That's a useful thing for me to know. And with the managed access, have we already looked at eliminating a turn lane to save space, or is that something that we could consider?
I think, go ahead, Jason. Go ahead.
Yeah, so we have looked at eliminating turn lanes as much as possible.
Okay.
To minimize it. Currently we have a 5-lane section from Reeder to 190th. And a lot of that has to do with to facilitate some left turns into 188th and out of 188th, and then the left turn pocket for northbound 190th.
Okay.
So by the time you get the required space for both of those, there's just nothing left in between. So that's the area where we have a 5-lane section. For the rest of the project, and we have a 5-lane section in Phase 2 as well between 242nd and 240th.
Yeah.
Where there's kind of a 5-lane section now.
Yep.
But in the middle, we're definitely looking at a 4-lane section.
Okay, awesome. Last question, and this is maybe even more out of scope than the last question that made Kyle jump in. Have we had any conversations with Community Transit about running the Green Line before this project is done? Or are they a hard, we won't even consider it until this project is done?
Good question. I think that one we would need to follow up on in terms of, because I think it's not just about this project. I think there's other factors in that, but we can give their team a call and get something followed up with council soon.
It is amazing how 2031 isn't as far away as it seems. But, you know.
Let's hope we say that in 2031.
Yes. Perfect. That's all I've got. Thank you.
I'm being encouraged to speak. Thank you for the presentation. Really interesting. Thanks also. I really appreciated looking at the plan sets in the packet. I know they can be confusing. But one of the things that I have become more aware of in the last 48 hours is that there are parcels in the King County portion of Bothell that are on septic. And I'm wondering how there's one particular property that's identified as a septic property on this alignment, and there are substantial easements on the property. I'm wondering if those have been included, or if as part of the appraisal use of that septic system or its kind of reserve area are included in such evaluation.
I'm going to defer that question to Eileen.
Hi, Eileen Kiefer, your city attorney. It's a good question, and actually not many people think to ask about the easements, right? You think of sort of the fee simple ownership. But that is something that your legal team is working through with, I know Kim and Rita have had a lot of discussions about going through the title report and looking at the easements. So just know that that's all of the easements on property, be whatever they are, that will be part of what we're looking at as part of the project.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Looking forward to this project. Well, the question I had, this is a state highway, right? Well, how come the state isn't, no? Yes?
No, it's not a state highway. The state declassified this a few years ago. I was trying to get the word, but it wasn't. So yeah, from downtown up to about PCC right by 405.
Really?
Driveway has been declassified. So,
okay. So it's 527 only put after the PCC. Okay.
Correct. They gave authority back to the city.
Oh, okay. Because yeah. But now because my question is, how come they're not going through this trouble? But I guess because we own it now, we have to go through it. Joys of ownership. The question is the answer. We got an email earlier today from one of the property managers or owners. You guys seen that? Like, yeah, what are we? If you say we're thinking about it still, like, what are we going to do? Because that is a major part shopping center.
Yeah. So. We don't want to get into any of the details about any specific properties, but the process that Robert and the right-of-way team is, they've been meeting with all the property owners, getting their input on how they use the property, kind of explaining what this big map that they get that shows all of their property with a hatch across it or significantly hatched, what that really means and what's actually going to happen. And so that helps oftentimes calm a lot of their concerns.
Can I add something? Yeah. And just kind of a comment about the temporary construction easements across all properties in the project. There'll be provisions inside the project specifications that limit how long they can work there and require them to maintain one-lane access into and out of the properties. So I don't know if that answers part of your question as well.
Oh, it does.
Yeah.
It's just it sounds, because you talked about how you reached out to 26 of the 29. I assume a big shopping center, you probably reached to those owners as well.
They're one of the ones we.
One of the ones,
Yeah.
or in general. So, but it sounded like either they weren't satisfied or, so I don't know if there's.
No, I spoke to the property owner's attorney, and so that was the property owner just kind of reiterating what was important to him.
Okay. Yeah, we don't have to get into the details. I'm just curious.
What I was going to share, like, I think this is a good, the observation is good in terms of the process that we're going through of that, what we've heard from council is the value of having the conversations early, right? So that people aren't finding out about this when they get the first letter in their mailbox saying that we're now going through this process. And so one of the consequences of that too is that then people will get, like, I really applaud staff for not only meeting with them, but also notifying the property owners that this meeting was going to take place tonight. So if it weren't for those conversations, we would have heard nothing, and then we would assume that everybody's okay with things. But instead, like, so that it's on the radar. And I think that's what that email represented today that's in the record, is that it's on the radar. And as Robert mentioned, they're reiterating what's important to them. And certainly I appreciate the effort to find that out early. And that means we have a better shot at satisfying.
Oh, it's amazing work. So thank you guys and guys, gender neutral. Question about funding. You mentioned funding is like we're trying to get what might be needed to get funding so that we can, I know we have the legislative discussions, but anything else? Is there a federal thing? Is there something else we can, we're budget season, can we make Juan's life more difficult?
It is one that we are talking about with our federal team as well, of being able to pursue that. And then there might be some other creative things that the team's looking at too. But definitely our federal and state partners are two sources that we're looking to.
Yes, so currently Phase 1 is fully funded, design, right-of-way construction, and similarly, Phase 2 is fully funded. And Phase 3, as for the Phase 3, we have design money to complete Phase 3 and right-of-way money as well. So, but we are looking for more funding for construction phase, and definitely there are some funding opportunities, and we just, at this point of time, we are not quite ready to apply for more grants because we want to make sure we are able to deliver the project first. Yeah, so definitely there are some funding opportunities such as cover grants and TIB grants and also STP grants, which we haven't actually applied for Phase 3. We receive STP grants for Phase 1 and Phase 2. So Phase 3 construction phase is definitely possible.
That's pretty cool. Thank you. So it's really a combination of we don't want to apply yet, and the money because we want to make sure that we can actually do the work, and then also the money isn't there yet in the first
Correct.
place.
So we apply fundings for Phase 1 for each phases, design phase, right-of-way phase, and construction phases, and also for different segments. And for each of the segments or each of the funding, there is expenditure deadlines or obligation deadlines we have to meet, and also because we have federal funding and it's NEPA environmental documentation dependence. At this point of time, we are waiting on the approval of the NEPA documents. Without NEPA approval, we cannot actually proceed with right-of-way funding obligations. The reason at this point of time we are able to proceed with early right-of-way acquisition because we receive state grants, the state funds, Move Ahead Washington funds, which allow us to begin the early right-of-way process.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
I have one final question about adjacent areas that may be improved. Early when I learned about this project, I also came under the impression that, for example, adjacent catch basins on 191st that are a little underfit and frequently flood would be incorporated into the project. Because that's on public property, and those are storm drains that are maintained by the city, is that not part of any potential right-of-way stuff, but still included in the project design?
well, it kind of depends on how far down 191st it goes. So the project's obviously making improvements to the intersection with 191st, but exactly how far our improvements go and where the catch basins are that you're concerned about or that we currently have issues with, I can't really speak to that. We'd have to look into it and get back to you.
That's fair.
Might be a different team, but we will follow up.
Okay, sounds good.
It seems like we're slowing down, so I'm off. Do you need anything else from us?
No, I think tonight's purpose really was to make sure that you kind of understood the process, what was coming, and then the acquisition ordinance will come back to council for action at a later time.
Perfect. Well, in that case, I'm going to adjourn the meeting.